Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.
Electoral reform at this point, not just because you're pressmen, also as Nigerians, you are partners in this, all religious groups in this country, that the minimum agenda for any process of resolving the Nigerian crisis requires a credible, reliable electoral reform. And so, you can imagine the shock that this consensus is now turning to a mirage. First, INEC, as the electoral management body, worked extremely hard. I myself was part of a team that managed to do some of the drafts around disability. So every stakeholder group in this country was involved in one way or another with this electoral reform. Disability community, religious communities, civil society community, political parties, as well as the INEC itself that did a great job. Before now, we had the Ken Namani committee, which I also served as a consultant, set up by Mr. President, and I made the recommendations. All those recommendations are in line with what ultimately came out as the committee reports. There was also intense public hearing, and so we have taken for granted that the consensus of the legislators and citizens of Nigeria was to have electoral law, a new electoral law, that does three things minimum. One, electronic transmission of results. Two, granting INEC power to supervise the election more effectively. And three, provide also enablement for persons with disability and all other shortcomings. And so we were elated when the committee prepared the report and all these things were all included. It's shocking that there's now a fraud committed against the National Assembly itself and against the Nigerian people. And so this press conference is to underline that in this period of heightened insecurity and government's commitment to stemming that tide, the worst thing anyone can do for this government, for the APC government, for Nigerians, and for the future of this country, is to deliberately implant electoral process that is not credible, that fails the minimum expectation of all party and all politicians. Doing that is simply putting fire on fuel to help secessionists, to help all kinds of persons who want to destroy this country. I want to end on this note. Everywhere in the world, in all literature of political development, it is clear that the main value of election is actually as a conflict resolution and avoidance mechanism. Elections help societies to have expectation that all the crises of development and democracy can be resolved in the next election. As soon as elections become incredible to the point that people have no confidence of this electoral process to resolve these conflicts, they will resort to violence, to exit, and to attacking the state. And so the leader of the National Assembly should be held responsible, should be accused, and I accuse them, of deliberately sowing violence and insecurity by removing the only minimum and credible thing that will ensure that we control back this violence and refocus energy in rebuilding this country. If there's no hope that people can be removed through valid election, then there's no hope that the country can avoid this conflict. So I want to end on this note, that it's a matter of stabilizing the Nigerian state. In fact, the President of Nigeria, who has spoken strongly against secession and all forms of destabilizing the country, should hold National Assembly leadership responsible if this fraudulent provision that denies INEC the power to make rules to include transmission of electoral result electronically, if it is returned, that means there's an elite conspiracy to ensure that Nigeria fails as a country. Bear this in mind. This law is very dangerous and almost stupid If a provision allows INEC to do everything discretionary, but says one thing INEC cannot do is to transmit results electronically, it means that someone somewhere has planned to rig the 2023 election. And that's what Nigerians have to rise and fight against. And that's what we're here, is the interest of the president himself, the APC that wants to leave a credible country for us, the opposition party, the professionals, the media practitioners, everybody should speak out that it's irrational, illogical, senseless to say that INEC can do anything under the earth but transmit election electronically. Let the leadership give us a statement that provides a reason, a logic that sustains that provision, and we will submit. Thank you.
The election from its pillars. I repeat, attempt to rig elections of the 2023 from its pillars. Now, every one of us knows that for quite a while, a lot of us on this side of the aisle have been agitating for an electoral reform. And this electoral reform is not meant to only benefit those people in power at the moment, but those who aspire to be in power in the no distance future. But it seems to us very clearly now that those who we gave our trust to amend our laws to make it more acceptable to all of us are trying to manipulate the system right even before it started. The agitation that we are making is not for us to benefit. Take a look at it. You will all agree with us that the election that took place in Edo and Ondo, where the elections were being transmitted through ZPAD by the INEC, was applauded by almost everybody in this country. And that eliminated the issue of collation center. It will reduce the issue of violence. It will give room for trust within the people, and then ensure that we, at the end of it all, have credible leaders who will govern this country. Any attempt whatsoever to submerge the will of that particular process or achievement that has been made over the years is tantamount to rigging and chaos that may ensue this country. God forbid. For us, we are interested in three issues. The issue of using of government resources for political gain. Any political party that finds itself in power uses government vehicles, uses government treasury, uses government machinery to continue to perpetuate himself or herself in power. Two, how can you imagine, if you do not take care of it, how can you imagine that today you run for a contest under a political party A, selling the manifesto of that political party, then while you are on that seat, the social contract that you sign with the people, you now move to political party B, taking another manifesto to sit on the same seat without losing that seat. We have demanded that anytime anybody who wants to move from political party to political party A, B, based on your freedom of association, leave that seat. Leave that seat so that another person, you can go to another political party and contest. How can you imagine that a political party that has won election before will now lose elections or be deregistered because the person that won that election has left the seat in which he has won under that political party? It is treasonable against the people. It is treasonable against the state. It is tantamount to deceit and unacceptable position against our democratic setting. So one way or the other, we demand as group, as conscious leaders, that the National Assembly was given a trust by all of us to do the needful. Before they were there today, there was a political party in power. That political party at that time was enjoying this manipulation. But today, that political party is crying. So what we are saying in essence is that the National Assembly should give us laws that will stand the test of time, that will give room to the lowest person in the society to aspire for the highest position in the land under a credible, free, and fair election. Any short of that, it's totally unacceptable. And I want to end on this note. For clarity and trust and building on this particular threshold of what INEC have done over the years, it is important that whatever document that the National Assembly want to pass into law should be made public within the circles of those who accept it, and then we will agree on it that this is what we want and what we agree on. Otherwise, it will be a sham election come 2023, and we do not agree to it. I thank you very much for listening. My name is Dr. Yunus Atanko. I'm a member of the National Consultative Front, a strong activist, and a leader of thoughts in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank the media partners who are here today, and say off the record that on behalf of all Nigerians, you have an obligation to get this message out there as much as possible. Beyond your day-to-day job, like, in my opinion, I believe that what we're doing here today and the electoral bill is going to determine the standard of living for every Nigerian, including you media persons, for the next 10 years. We once had a party in this country that said we were going to rule for 60 years. If this electoral bill, this manipulated, fraudulent electoral bill, is passed as it is, then we're going to have deteriorated standard of living for the next 60 years. You can quote me. So again, like I said, off the record, I want to implore you media organizations to please help us get this message out as much as possible. Now to my statement. My name is Jude Ferrami Adejo. I'm the convener for Raising New Voices Initiative and a member of the Access Coalition. This morning, Honorable Rimamambe of the House of Representatives was on Arise Television. And he said, and I quote, "The members of the House have not received the report of the committee, the Joint Committee on INEC, for this bill that's supposed to be passed." The members of the committee, he was a member of the Committee of the Electoral Reform in the last assembly, but for this assembly, he's not a member of the committee. He said the members of the committee, some members of the Committee of INEC in this 9th National Assembly has expressed disappointment at the fraudulent copy or the manipulated copy or the trending copy of the electoral bill that we're seeing, where it is prohibited, explicitly prohibited, that while INEC can organize elections using electronic voting, it cannot transmit results using electronic voting. There is no logical excuse, there's no logical reasoning why you would be able to conduct a voting exercise using electronic means, but you would be prohibited from transmitting the results of that same election using electronic means, except that the leaders who are intending to pass this bill want to rig the elections, not just in 2023, but beyond. Partners here and organizations here have worked on electoral reforms for the past couple of years. I finished my master's, and this is, you can put this off the record. I finished my master's and came back to this country because I believe that electoral reform is a prima facie requirement. We call it electoral reform advocacy. We've been doing that for the last 3 years. For some organizations, for the last 5 years, right? Imagine how long we have taken to get to this point. If the electoral bill is passed right now in the manner that it is, you can expect that the next 10 years we'll be advocating for leaders who are elected under this bill, who rig elections under this bill, to pass an amendment to change Section 50, Subsection 2 of that same bill, right, for years. This, in my opinion, is a bill from hell. We have to call a spade and say it as it is, right? This electoral bill, and I'm sure you must have heard people and fellow leaders who have talked here before now, right? They've talked about what has happened to electronic transmission. But there is more, and I'll tell you. There was a provision by the Joint Committee. I mean, there was a public hearing. The Joint Committee and the House of Representatives and the Senate came together to agree that INEC will have provisions to review election results declared under duress. That was excommunicated, removed, deleted, subtracted from the current bill that was in House, right? My fellow young leader here has talked about the increase in campaign funding from 1 billion for president from 5 billion for president to 15 billion. Basically saying that there is the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria under this bill will be a corrupt president. We can say that for sure. will be a corrupt president. Because even if you don't have 15 billion naira that you've stolen to wage a campaign in this country, and you bring people together to raise 15 billion naira for you to run a presidential campaign, right? You can be sure that those people will be on your neck to steal public funds when you get elected as president, right? That's not all. In the joint report that was agreed from recommendations at the public hearing, we had the situation whereby the cap on nomination forms by political parties was inserted, was recommended, so that young people in this country with the spirit of not young to run bill can have a fair chance at running for elective office in this country. Not just how many young persons will run for president and get elected. At any point in time, there are 37 Nigerians out of a population of more than 200 million people who occupy the offices of governors and president, right? Young people require a level playing ground, a free playing ground, a fair playing ground to be able to run for elective office at the House of Representatives, at the state assemblies, at the councillorship level. But this electoral bill will put an end to any gains that we have been hoping for under the Not Young to Run bill, which the administration passed with the idea and the notion and the narrative that we are an administration that supports young people. This electoral bill does not support young people. We can put an end, we can say bye-bye to youth participation in politics in Nigeria if this bill is passed. What is more, we have been advocating and telling young Nigerians and hold Nigerian media to go and get their PVC. The Independent National Electoral Commission has put up an innovative technology portal so that people can register for their PVC. But Nigerians do not believe that their votes count. And if Nigerians don't believe that their votes count, and we pass a bill that explicitly says that a procedure, an innovative procedure that INEC has already engaged in Hondo elections, right, and the previous elections recently, right, will ensure and convince people that your vote will count. Nigerians stay at the polling units every time we go for an election, up to the point that the election results are voted for, are counted. And then we get to collation stage, and then everybody starts reading results of elections that they don't believe in. A technology and innovative portal that INEC has released and tried, right, will ensure that we can have people, Nigerians, that believe that their votes will count. This electoral bill is also saying that will be explicitly prohibited. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to call a spade, and we have to say things as it says. I want to implore the National Assembly leadership to do one thing: deny this draft that we are all saying, because it is a fraudulent draft, it's a manipulated draft, and that we can all sit down together and pass the true wishes of the people in the Electoral Reform Act. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're going to have princess around.
Yeah, please.